By 9:38 p.m. on Christmas night, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls, voicemails, messages stacking on top of each other. Everyone who laughed at me that morning was suddenly desperate to hear my voice. That same phone had been completely silent just hours earlier. By 10 a.m. on Christmas morning, my family was celebrating my sister's luxury gift like she'd won the lottery. They passed it around. They took pictures. They told her how proud they were. By noon, it was my turn. That's when the room got awkward. That's when the laughter started. Not the happy kind. The kind you hear when people don't take you seriously. I smiled. I nodded. I pretended it didn't sting. But it did. What they gave me that morning wasn't just disappointing. It was humiliating. And it happened in front of everyone. What they didn't know was that by nightfall, they'd be calling me nonstop. Panicking. Because without me, everything they depended on was about to collapse. What they did to me that morning was cruel. What they needed from me that night, they never imagined I'd refuse. But the exact moment that broke me, the moment that changed everything, happened right there, under the Christmas lights, with the whole family watching. And once you hear what my gift was, you'll understand exactly why I stood up and walked away. I'm Sophia. I'm in my late 20s now, and I've always been the middle child. The one who was expected to be understanding, to go with the flow, to be the peacekeeper when things got rough. It's funny how being the middle child can sometimes feel like being invisible. You're not the baby who gets all the attention, and you're not the firstborn who's always expected to set the example. You're just there. And growing up, I learned early that love in my family wasn't really divided equally. It was assigned. I'm sure some of you know exactly what I mean. My younger sister? She was the golden child. Everything she did, whether it was big or small, was celebrated. The kind of celebrations that felt a little over the top. The kind that made you wonder if maybe, just maybe, you'd been forgotten. As for me, I was the responsible one. The quiet achiever. The one who stayed in the background, doing my part without much fanfare. But there was always this sense that no matter what I did, it was never enough to get that same recognition. And my parents? Well, they always found a way to excuse everything my sister did, no matter how little effort she put in. She could fail a test, and they'd throw her a party. Me? I'd work for weeks on something important, and it was just expected. No extra praise. It's strange, really. It wasn't outright cruel. Just subtle. Over time, I stopped asking for more. I learned to accept it. But things were about to change. And Christmas that year? It was the final straw. Looking back now, the favoritism didn't start with Christmas. It started in the small moments, the ones that were easy to dismiss, easy to explain away. By the time I was in middle school, I was buying most of my own school supplies. Not because my parents couldn't afford them, but because it was easier than asking. Meanwhile, my sister would come home with average grades, and somehow that turned into a surprise gift. New clothes. A new phone case. A just because present. I remember watching that happen and telling myself it didn't matter. That grades weren't everything. That I should just focus on being responsible. So I did. I got a part-time job while still in school. I worked weekends. I saved every paycheck. My sister didn't need to work. She had an allowance. If she ran out of money, my parents would quietly refill it, no questions asked. And when milestones came, the difference became impossible to ignore. When I graduated early, my dad hugged me and said, "That's what we expected from you." That was it. No celebration. No dinner. Just expectation. But when my sister dropped out for a semester, my parents organized a family dinner. They called it a mental health reset. They told her how brave she was, how proud they were that she was finding herself. I sat at that table, smiling, clapping along, wondering what part of myself I was allowed to find. Holidays were always the same story. My sister would unwrap thoughtful, expensive gifts, things she'd casually mentioned once months earlier. Things they clearly remembered. My gifts were practical. Last minute. Things that said, "We didn't forget you, we just didn't think very hard." Socks. Gift cards. Items bought on the way home from work. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. consistent. And over time, it taught me something dangerous. That my role in the family wasn't to be celebrated. It was to be useful. And for a long time, I told myself I was okay with that. By the time that Christmas came around, my life finally felt steady. For the first time, I was financially stable. Not rich. Just comfortable enough to breathe. What no one really knew was how much I'd been helping my parents throughout the year. Quietly. No announcements. No credit. I paid bills when they were short. Covered emergency expenses when things got tight. Sometimes anonymously, so no one would feel embarrassed. So no one would feel like they owed me anything. I never brought it up. I didn't want praise. I didn't want applause. I just hoped, maybe this time, they'd notice. I didn't want anything expensive. I didn't want luxury. I just wanted, once, to feel seen. Christmas morning felt different. Important. The living room was fully decorated. A massive tree stood in the corner, lights glowing, ornaments carefully placed. Relatives filled the house, laughing, talking over each other. Phones were already out, recording everything before the first gift was even opened. The floor was covered in wrapped presents, bright paper, shiny bows, stacked higher than usual. There was excitement in the air. Expectation. I sat there on the couch, watching everyone take their seats, telling myself not to overthink it. Telling myself this was just another holiday. But deep down, I let myself hope. Just a little. Because something about that morning made it feel like this Christmas was going to matter more than all the others. The moment had finally come. Gift opening. My sister went first. She tore through the wrapping paper like a hurricane. And there it was, a brand new luxury bag, exactly what she had been hinting at for months. She screamed. She cried. My parents were recording every second, capturing her reaction for posterity. Everyone clapped, cheering, taking pictures. Comments floated through the room. She deserves it. Our pride. And then, silence. It was my turn. I picked up my gift. A small envelope. I opened it carefully, hoping it was some clever surprise. Inside, a $5 gift card. The room froze. And then they laughed. Not politely. Not quietly. They laughed in that way that makes you feel tiny. You're practical. You don't need much. You understand us. I looked around. Forced smiles. Awkward laughter. Someone muttered, "At least it's something." It hit me all at once. The humiliation. The favoritism. The careful way this had been orchestrated. And that's when I realized. This wasn't an accident. They had planned this. Every laugh. Every clap. Every whispered comment. It was all set up. And right in that moment, I knew something inside me had shifted. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, you're not alone. Hit subscribe button now. And then it began. The dismissive comments. Don't be dramatic. You're too sensitive. Be grateful for what you got. As if being humiliated in front of the whole family was something I should just swallow quietly. My parents joined in, insisting I was imagining things. You're overreacting, Sophia. It wasn't that bad. My sister couldn't resist either. She laughed right in front of the guests, making jokes at my expense as if it were all a game. I smiled. I nodded. I tried to keep it together. But inside, I felt smaller and smaller with every word, every glance, every laugh. I felt small, not because of the gift, but because everyone saw how little I mattered. And no one cared. It was the kind of hurt that settles deep into your chest, quiet but heavy, and it makes you realize something crucial. Sometimes, being ignored in front of everyone hurts more than being insulted. I stood up. Slowly. No shouting. No tears. No dramatic exit. I placed the gift back on the table. Carefully. Purposefully. I grabbed my coat. And I walked out. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't explain. I simply left. Once I was in my car, I blocked every family number, turned off my phone, and drove away. Silence became my power. For the first time that day, I felt a sense of control. A quiet, steady control. Because sometimes, the strongest statement you can make isn't in words. It's in the absence of them. What they didn't know. Was that the house they were celebrating in? The bills they weren't worried about? The emergency backup they relied on? All of it depended on me. I had been quietly paying the mortgage, covering the utilities, making sure everything ran smoothly without anyone ever knowing. Legally, the house relied on my income, and my parents had carefully hidden the financial troubles from my sister, so she could keep living in her little bubble of luxury, thinking everything was taken care of. But that Christmas night, things went sideways. A payment had been flagged, an account locked, and suddenly, everything collapsed. I watched it all unfold from the quiet of my car, knowing that the very family who humiliated me that morning now had no choice but to face the truth. For the first time, the power dynamic had shifted. And I held the key. When I finally turned my phone back on, the screen was flooded. Dozens of missed calls. Voicemails stacked one after another, my parents' voices shaky, my sister crying, panicking, begging. Apologies mixed with blame. We didn't mean for this to happen. It's all falling apart. Please, Sophia, help us. And my sister, she finally realized. The shock on her face. The anger at our parents. The fear creeping in, knowing she had relied on someone else for everything. It was quiet justice. No yelling. No drama. They didn't miss me. They missed what I provided. For years, I had been invisible. Used. Taken for granted. But now, they had no choice but to see my value. And it wasn't in the gift they had laughed at that morning. It was in the life I quietly held together while they celebrated someone else. When I finally spoke to them, I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I was calm. Firm. I looked at them and said what had been simmering inside me for years. This wasn't about the gift. It was about every time I was made to feel invisible. Every time my effort was ignored, every time my presence was overlooked, every time my worth was measured against someone else's. I refused to fix it. I refused to swoop in and save the day just because they panicked. I demanded honesty, acknowledgement, respect. And then I stepped back. Permanently, or at least for as long as it would take them to see me clearly. For the first time, I was not just the middle child. I was the one setting the terms. And that silence, that refusal to be taken for granted, spoke louder than any words ever could. Favoritism doesn't just break children. It breaks families. It leaves scars in quiet places, in moments no one notices, in the silences that stretch between birthdays and holidays. If you've ever been the strong one, the understanding one, the forgotten one, you're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to protect yourself, even when it hurts. If you haven't done the needful, do that now by hitting that subscribe button for more real-life revenge stories that expose hidden family truths. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the recognition of your own worth. Thank you for listening.